This doll, it will change everything. It's perfect. Help me. I didn't touch it, Angie. Help us! Help, Lou!
Documentary script. The year was 1970. A mother walked into an antique shop, searching for the perfect birthday gift for her daughter. Among the dusty shelves and forgotten treasures, something caught her eye. A Raggedy Ann doll. Innocent, charming, the kind of toy that should bring joy and comfort. But this doll would become the vessel for a horror so profound, so utterly malevolent, that its name alone would send chills down the spine of anyone who dared speak it. This is the story of Annabelle. Not the porcelain-faced monstrosity you've seen in movies, but something far more terrifying. A simple cloth doll that became the gateway to hell itself. Donna was 28 years old, a dedicated nursing student living in a modest apartment in Hartford, Connecticut. She shared her home with Angie, her best friend and fellow nurse. Their lives were ordinary, filled with textbooks, hospital shifts, and dreams of helping others. When Donna unwrapped her mother's gift, she smiled at the familiar face of Raggedy and red yarn hair cascading around button eyes and that stitched, perpetual smile. She placed the doll on her bed, an innocent decoration in what would soon become a nightmare. But innocence has a way of rotting from within. The first sign came 3 weeks later. Donna arrived home from a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital, exhausted and ready to collapse in a bed. But something was wrong. The doll wasn't where she'd left it. Instead of sitting against her pillow, it was now positioned at the foot of the bed, its button eyes seeming to follow her as she moved around the room. She shrugged it off. Perhaps Angie had moved it while cleaning, but Angie swore she hadn't touched it. The movements became more frequent, more deliberate. The doll would appear in different rooms entirely, always in positions that defied explanation. Sometimes they'd find it sitting upright in a chair, other times standing against a wall, its fabric arms hanging limp at its sides like a hangman. The most disturbing discovery came when they found it kneeling in the corner of the living room, facing the wall, as if it were being punished for some unseen transgression. The apartment grew cold, not just physically cold, but spiritually frigid, as if warmth itself was being drained from their home. Shadows seemed deeper. Silence felt oppressive. And always, those button eyes watched. Then came the night of the first message. Donna stumbled to the bathroom at 3:17 a.m., her bare feet padding across the hardwood floor. In the dim moonlight streaming through the window, she saw it. A piece of parchment paper, ancient and yellowed, lying on her pillow. Written in childish scrawl were 2 words that made her blood freeze. Help me. Neither she nor Angie owned parchment paper. They searched every drawer, every closet, every corner of their apartment. Nothing. The paper had appeared from nowhere, like a message from beyond the grave. The next morning brought another note, this one more desperate. Help us. And then, most chilling of all, help Lou.
Help us! Help, Lou!
Lou was their friend, a kind man who often visited for dinner and study sessions. But Lou had always felt uneasy around the doll. He'd mentioned several times that something about it felt wrong, evil even. He'd urged them to get rid of it, but they'd laughed off his concerns. Now, it seemed whatever was inside that cloth prison knew his name. Desperation drove them to seek answers from a medium, an elderly woman named Mrs. Bradford who claimed she could speak with the dead. During a seance conducted by flickering candlelight, Mrs. Bradford's eyes rolled back, her voice becoming that of a small child. My name is Annabelle Higgins.
My name is Annabelle Higgins. I was 7.
The voice whispered through the medium's lips. I'm 7 years old. I died here, in the field where your apartment building now stands. I was playing. I fell. I was so scared, so alone. The doll is pretty. I like the doll. I just want someone to love me. The story was heartbreaking. A tragic child, lost and confused, seeking comfort in their world. Moved by compassion, Donna and Angie gave their permission for the spirit to stay. They told Annabelle she could remain with the doll, that she was welcome in their home. They had no idea they'd just signed their death warrant. Permission granted, the entity shed its mask of innocence. The apartment became a war zone of supernatural terror. Furniture moved on its own, heavy dressers scraping across floors in the dead of night. Windows slammed shut with such force that glass shattered. The temperature would plummet without warning, their breath forming clouds in the suddenly Arctic air. But it was Lou who bore the brunt of the entity's rage. He'd been staying over one evening, sleeping on the couch after a late study session. At exactly 3:33 a.m., he woke to find himself completely paralyzed. Every muscle in his body had seized, leaving him unable to move, unable to scream, unable to even blink. Invisible hands wrapped around his throat, squeezing with inhuman strength. His vision blurred as oxygen was cut off, black spots dancing before his eyes. And there, at the foot of the couch, sat Annabelle. Her button eyes gleamed in the darkness, that stitched smile seeming wider somehow, more malicious. For an eternity that lasted only minutes, Lou felt himself dying, felt his life being squeezed away by something that should not exist. When the paralysis finally broke, Lou gasped and choked, his hands flying to his throat. The doll was gone, but when he looked down at his chest, he saw them. 7 deep scratches, carved into his flesh as if by massive claws. They burned like acid, the wounds refusing to heal properly for weeks. The message was clear: the entity wanted them gone, and it was willing to kill to make that happen. Father Hagen arrived 3 days later, summoned by Donna's desperate phone call. A young priest with kind eyes and unwavering faith, he'd dealt with possession cases before. But when he stepped into the apartment, his face went pale. The air itself seemed to recoil from his presence, becoming thick and oppressive. Electronic devices malfunctioned. His holy water began to boil in its container.
This is beyond me. You need the Warrens.
This is beyond my abilities, he admitted, his voice shaking slightly. You need the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Even their names carried weight in the paranormal community. Ed, a self-taught demonologist with decades of experience. Lorraine, a gifted clairvoyant who could see into the spiritual realm itself. They had faced demons before, had battled forces that most people couldn't even comprehend. When they entered the apartment, Lorraine immediately staggered, her psychic abilities overwhelmed by the malevolent presence surrounding the doll.
It's not possessed, it's being used.
It's not possessed, she gasped, steadying herself against the wall. It's being used. The doll is a conduit, a vessel for something far worse than a human spirit. Ed examined Annabelle with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen true evil. This entity has been lying to you, he explained, his voice grave. There was no Annabelle Higgins. No tragic child. Demons are master manipulators. They prey on human compassion, use our desire to help against us. By giving it permission to stay, you've given it power over you. The Warrens explained the 3 stages of demonic infestation. First came infestation, where the entity establishes its presence. Then oppression, where it begins to attack and torment its victims. Finally, possession, where it takes complete control of a human host. You're in the second stage, Lorraine warned. If we don't act now, one of you will become its permanent home. The exorcism began immediately. Ed sprinkled holy water throughout the apartment, while Lorraine led prayers, her voice rising above the supernatural chaos that erupted around them. The entity fought back with savage fury. Dishes flew from cabinets, shattering against walls. The temperature plummeted to near freezing levels. An invisible force shoved Ed backward, sending him crashing into furniture. But they persevered, their faith stronger than the demon's rage. Finally, as dawn broke over Hartford, the apartment fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, though the sense of evil remained. The doll sat motionless on the bed, looking once again like nothing more than an innocent toy. But Ed knew better. "We have to take it," he told the frightened women. "This isn't over. It will never be over as long as that thing exists." The journey back to the Warrens' home in Monroe, Connecticut, should have taken 2 hours. It took 6. Ed's car stalled repeatedly, the engine dying without explanation. The steering wheel jerked in his hands, as if something was trying to drive them off the road. Twice, they had to pull over while Ed sprinkled holy water on the bag containing Annabelle and said prayers to regain control of the vehicle. Even secured in a blessed bag, the doll's malevolent influence reached out like invisible claws, trying to prevent its imprisonment. Upon arriving home, the Warrens placed Annabelle in Ed's study, but the disturbances began almost immediately. Books fell from shelves with violent force. Footsteps echoed through empty hallways. Visitors reported feeling watched, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread that lingered long after they'd left the house. The solution was a specially constructed case, blessed by clergy and sealed with prayers. Made of glass and wood, it was designed not just to contain Annabelle, but to prevent the entity from reaching out to influence others. A simple warning was placed on the case: positively do not open. But even imprisonment couldn't fully contain the evil within. Visitors to the Warrens Occult Museum reported strange experiences. Some felt physically ill when looking at the doll. Others claimed her button eyes followed their movement around the room. Several people who mocked or challenged Annabelle met with mysterious accidents shortly afterward. Car crashes on perfectly clear days. Sudden illnesses that doctors couldn't explain. Deaths that were ruled accidental but seemed far too convenient. The doll had become more than just a haunted object. She was a curse, a malevolent force that could reach beyond her glass prison to touch the lives of those foolish enough to underestimate her power. One incident stands out among the rest. A young couple visiting the museum decided to test Annabelle's power. The man knocked on her case, taunting the doll, daring her to do something. His girlfriend laughed, calling it all nonsense and superstition. They left the museum in high spirits, joking about the silly ghost stories. 3 hours later, their motorcycle hit a tree on a straight section of highway with perfect visibility. The man died instantly. His girlfriend survived, but not before telling paramedics that she'd seen the doll's face in her rearview mirror just before the crash. That stitched smile somehow twisted into a grin of malicious triumph. Today, Annabelle remains in her case at the Warrens Occult Museum, now run by their son-in-law, Tony Spera. Thousands of visitors come each year, drawn by curiosity and the thrill of being near something truly evil. Most leave with nothing more than a good story. But some carry away something darker. The real horror of Annabelle isn't in her appearance. Unlike the twisted porcelain doll from Hollywood movies, the actual Annabelle looks completely harmless. Red yarn hair, button eyes, a simple stitch smile. She could be any child's beloved toy. And perhaps that's what makes her so terrifying. Evil doesn't always announce itself with fanfare and dramatic music. Sometimes it hides behind the most innocent facades. Sometimes it smiles. The case containing Annabelle bears water damage from holy water that was mysteriously heated to boiling temperatures, though it shows scratches from the inside, as if something with claws had tried to tear its way out. Temperature readings around her case are consistently 10 to 15 degrees colder than the rest of the room. But most disturbing of all are the reports from the museum's security cameras. Motion sensors trigger in the middle of the night. Electromagnetic field detectors spike without explanation. And sometimes, just sometimes, the cameras capture what appears to be a subtle shift in the doll's position. Never enough to be certain, but always enough to make you wonder. What you believe is up to you. Skeptics will tell you it's all elaborate storytelling, psychological suggestion, and coincidental accidents. They'll explain away every incident with rational thought and scientific reasoning. And perhaps they're right. But late at night, when shadows grow long and ordinary objects take on sinister shapes, remember this. Donna thought she was just accepting an innocent birthday gift. The medium thought she was helping a lost child find peace. Lou thought he was staying overnight at a friend's apartment. They were all wrong. Evil doesn't always knock down your door with violence and chaos. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in innocence, wearing the face of something you want to help, something you want to love. Sometimes it waits patiently behind glass, that stitched smile hiding thoughts too dark for human minds to comprehend. And sometimes, when you're alone in the dark, you might catch a glimpse of button eyes watching from the shadows, still waiting, still hungry, still plotting its eventual escape from its glass prison. The question isn't whether you believe in Annabelle. The question is, what's hiding behind the smile of something in your own home? What innocent object might be concealing something far more sinister? And when the lights go out tonight, will you be brave enough to check? Because somewhere in Monroe, Connecticut, a doll sits motionless in her case, surrounded by warnings and blessed barriers. But if you listen carefully, if you pay attention to the stories that refuse to die, you might hear the truth that chills investigators to their core. Annabelle is still waiting, still watching, still hungry, and her smile never fades.